Well, hey, Lakeview family, it's Pastor Evan here bringing you today's dose of midweek medicine. We need to get God's truth inside of us as we interact with the viral ideas and the troubling realities in the world around us. And right now, we are in the midst of Holy Week, this time when we remember the final days of Jesus' life before his death and resurrection. And on Tuesday of this week, Pastor Keith highlighted how the Bible draws attention to stories of when God's people walk through times of crisis on their way to the main story. And our lives and our moments of need, they're like chapters in this larger storyline that God is writing. And Israel was a people who knew their story. They were always locating themselves in the narrative of God's redemption, of how God had rescued them out of slavery in Egypt and how he had his judgment pass over them. And that is the backdrop for Thursday of Holy Week. As the Jewish leaders plotted to arrest him and Judas planned to betray him, Jesus made preparations to share a final Passover with his disciples. He longed to have this time with them. He wanted them to see this current moment in light of the story of redemption that God has been telling. But when Jesus goes to explain the elements of the Passover meal, he gives them a new significance. That's what it says in Mark chapter 14 in verse 22. And as they were eating, he took bread and after blessing it, broke it and gave it to them and said, "Take, this is my body." And he took a cup. And when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank of it. And he said to them, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many." And you could translate that for many as in the place of many. In the same way that the blood of the lamb was shed in the place of the firstborn, Jesus' blood would be poured out in the place of the many who would look to him in faith. And if you remember the Passover event, there wasn't anything about the Israelites that made them more deserving than the Egyptians. It wasn't the people inside of the house, but the blood on the doorposts that made all the difference. The Israelites had a common problem with the Egyptians, and yet they received uncommon favor. And right now, we are in the midst of a global need. Everyone around the world has been affected by this in one way or another. And as a church, and as the church around the world, we are with everyone else in the suffering that this creates, as well as the opportunities that we have to serve our neighbors. We have common humanity, and yet we have uncommon favor. As many in our church family know already, our households do not get passed over for this virus. For that, you're going to need to spray Lysol on your doorposts or something like that. We interact with the same sin and the same suffering as the rest of the world, but we have something that the rest of the world does not. We have Jesus. We have his blood poured out for the forgiveness of sin. We have judgment that has been passed over us, having been placed upon him. We have his body given so that we might have him. We have a God who is near to us, who is leveraging all of his sovereign resources for our need. A God who says, if he has not spared his own son, how will he not with him graciously give us all things? Do you sense that? Because you need to zoom out from this current moment and see the larger story that we are in, not just the current chapter that we're feeling right now. This is a truth to be received. That's what Jesus says. He hands out the bread and he hands out the wine. He says, take this. He intends to be taken in by faith. And so let's take in this medicine for our souls. Let's remember the redemptive story that we've been pulled into. Let's lay a hold of Jesus by faith and all of the favor, the uncommon favor that he has brought to our lives. And let's plan to celebrate this together this Sunday, Easter morning at 10 a.m. We will see you then.